Hi Celine, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Hi,
here
Sarah.
In beautiful, beautiful Venice. Maybe we could kick off with a bit of an introduction to your role here at the festival. 79th edition, but of course you're president's jury in a particular selection. So can you talk us through that?
Well, yeah, I'm a member of the jury of Giornate degli Autori, which is a parallel section here in the Venice Film Festival. And it's quite a very singular assignment because we're 28. There's 28 of us in this jury. I am named president, but I'm really, I feel equally committed to watching the film with my 27 co-jurors. They're very young cinephiles or future filmmakers or editors or future members of this industry, hopefully. And we have to decide. We had to choose one of the film in the competition. So we're watching 10 films together, and we're going to pick one.
And what stood out for you? Of course, I'm not going to ask you to already be picking out favourites, but what's kind of stood out to you from the selection this year, and what do you think it kind of has to say about where we are in terms of our cinema landscape?
Well, that's the beauty of being in a festival. First, you see films that you know nothing about. They come from very far, especially in parallel sections where it's not the same spirit or politics. And so you discover a film not knowing anything about it, and it's always a photography of cinema, and a photography also of a political line of a section. So first, that's the first thing you feel. Where are we right now? Where are the films coming from? What are they telling us? And after this, within this big crisis that we've all been through. It's also, it's more than cinematographical landscape, I think. It's also giving us some news about, the world. And that's, so I can't talk about the films, but, and I can't tell yet if they have like a common point but we can feel already strong female voices and very, contemporary ideas and very different styles of cinema. That's the beauty of this selection, I think. It's that it's very open. Films are coming from all over the world. A lot of first or second features also. So it's. I feel like maybe also because I'm surrounded by a very young crowd. I feel also we're taking the pulse of a young cinema.
Coming from a juror's perspective, what do you look for in a film? Like, what's really going to grab you, or what impresses you, or what makes you feel like, is it kind of breaking boundaries in cinema making? Is it being bold? What are the things that stand out to you?
I'm always looking for new forms, I'm always expecting to be consolated by a form that I don't know. So it's about emotion, but it's also about a grammar of cinema. Even when I make film, I'm always thinking about celebrating cinema in a way. And there's a very different way to do that. You could either go very classical, which is a way to celebrate cinema, or create a new grammar. Mostly that's what I'm excited about. I'm looking to be, surprised. Really not looking to be shocked, to feel like I'm meeting someone. I always, I want to feel, films are always a little bit a structure of time, an architecture of time, and I just want to feel good within that architecture of time, and to feel the time pass when I'm in the room.
Going back to kind of your career and your trajectory, I believe, in the beginning you didn't even see yourself perhaps even as a director, but just primarily as a screenwriter. So can you talk a little bit about your route into film, your love of film growing up and from your grandmother, and how you kind of broke into this world?
Well, I was lucky enough to be introduced to cinema at a very young age by my grandmother, who was a cinephile, and who introduced me to Fred Astaire, John Kelly, Capra, the American comedy of the 50s, Chaplin, Italian cinema also, neorealism. And, I grew up in France with a very strong culture of cinema. I had a strong appetite. My life was structured around seeing film, whether it was on TV, or just, in my local art house cinema. And then I was lucky enough to enter the National Film School, and decided that, I would earn a job so that I would be sure that I would, could be part of this industry. And screenwriting felt natural, and suddenly I started writing my own material, and it felt natural to actually direct it. You know, when you love cinema at such a young age, you sometimes you don't even know about the different things you could do. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to direct a film at a very young age and to really enjoy it.
And did it feel back then to be a very male-dominated world, you know, breaking into directing? And how have you seen that change? Or do you even perhaps see yourself as one of the proponents of that changing?
Well, I hope so, because I think that when I first saw consciously a film made by a woman, it helped me to project myself into this industry. So I hope that my presence and my film can do the same. I didn't... No, I wasn't really aware that it was that male-driven at the time, because you're falling in love with film and you're like, you know, it's like cinema has no gender. And then, you know, you get realistic, you're more materialistic, you look at who's doing the film, you know. The fact that it's also a very capitalistic, speculative industry, you know. I realize it more and more. I realize it even more now than 10 years ago or when I started in this industry, so...
And thinking about your filmography in particular, I mean, I guess you can kind of see what different things can be brought to the screen by having a woman, you know, penning the piece or behind the camera, because there's a lot of themes that perhaps emerge, you know, from Girlhood, Portrait of a Woman on Fire, through to Petit Maman, about kind of the female perspective, the female gaze, the fluidity of kind of gender and sexuality. So, you know, would you try and pinpoint what some of those themes might be and how you've explored them in your film?
Well, you know, I don't think of my work is around a theme. I don't see this as a theme or as a subject. It's an experience, it's a perspective. I would say, you know, it's a feminist perspective. It's not only female. You know, some females speak the language of patriarchy. I guess, you know, I've also spoken the language of patriarchy. So I really see it as, yeah, I'm not picking a subject. I'm not trying to build a story around the theme. I'm not here to give a message. Films are not alibis. They are, you know, to me, they're like houses. I tend to think of it as some form of architecture in a way. Architecture of space, architecture of time, and I'm just trying to make it new and exciting. And I guess, you know, if you're trying to make it new, it's gonna be about new ideas for me. You know, films are ideas grooving together. So, and you know, it has always been the case. I think, you know, avant-garde is always counterculture, and I feel part of an history. Actually, you know, I don't feel like a pioneer. I feel part of an history of a feminist ideas and perspective in cinema and art in general.
And what might have been some of the highlights for you? I mean, you've worked with so many wonderful people, and I was thinking particularly she came to London with Portrait of a Lady on Fire with Adele and Naomi. I just love both those actresses, you know. But what might have been some of the highlights for you in your filmmaking so far?
Well, for sure, the Portrait of a Lady on Fire ride was a highlight, some form of climax, even, I think. I don't think I will ever go through those steps again, mostly also because, you know, it's done and I hate to repeat myself. But that scale of attention and of love and impact was, of course, and just before the pandemic, you know, the cinema closed where we were actually on screen in the UK. It really felt like quite a unique moment.
And how do you see the landscape, as we were talking about earlier, has improved for female filmmakers? I mean, in some respects, it definitely feels like there's more of a kind of gender balance, particularly at festivals, if you come to Venice or in London indeed. But maybe there's still those barriers that exist, let's say for like the bigger budgets or kind of, you know, sort of like the art house and maybe a few of like the big names, but there's like a gap in between. And what do you think might need to change if you think there's still a gap?
Well, you know, the same things that need to change in society. So, yes, there's more opportunities, but as you mentioned, I mean, the budgets are not the same. We know that women's career are less longer, they make less film. Of course, now, at least now it's addressed. Before it was ignored. So now it's about political will, but we are in the middle of backlash. So, you know, it's not only about are there female directors, it's also, once more, is there a feminist perspective? Is it, so there's a strong tension, because as those ideas are rising, each time those ideas have been rising, they've been, you know, shut down. And I think we're right now in the middle of this because, you know, also the industry can take our ideas and for its own good. So it's an everyday fight. You have to be very vigilant and you have to fight for that dynamic.
Just talking about what we were mentioning earlier, like all this stuff that's happened with like Harry Styles, for example, where there seems to be this tension at the moment in society between pushing for things to be more free. You can be who you want to be, love who you want to love, and that can be represented on screen. But then there also seems to be resistance to that, saying, it's Harry, he's not coming out whether he's queer or not. So do you feel that sometimes there's the illusion of progress when actually it's not there, and that is something that runs through both societal stuff but also bleeds into the cinema world?
Well, cinema is an art and an industry. It costs a lot of money, so for me it has a lot to do with capitalism and struggle of class. And it's not out of the world. It's exactly the same dynamics that we're all right now. So it's also about being more sober in a way. And it's a paradox because you can always count on the market to actually harvest those ideas because they want to please the young crowd, and art is about being sincere.
You were saying you're working with all these younger filmmakers, with the jury and everything. Do you have advice, or how would you perhaps mentor or help them navigate this world from, the experience you've had?
Well, I think the landscape has been changing so much. I don't know that if I could give really an advice coming from my own experience as a young filmmaker. Mostly I'm listening to them and counting on them. But my advice would always be find friends. Cinema goes along very well with friendship. So it's hard to find joy these days. But you should always be looking for that, and I think you can, So they're a group. They're a group here, and I think cinema is also very collaborative. It's about finding your group and growing up together. That's my advice. I've done all my films with one producer, and she's essential to my work. So yeah, that would be my advice.
And how do you see the health of the cinema industry, both, I guess, in general, film festivals, but also in France, because French cinema has its perhaps own, I'm going to say je ne sais quoi, but that's a bit of a cliche.
Well, French cinema is very privileged. We have very strong support. Cinema is very important in France. There's a lot of public funding. We're the country that does the most first feature in the world. So there's a very specific side to the French industry. The fact that we are still resisting, we have our own chronology of media. We are resisting in a way to the platforms by making them commit to financing films that are in French, made by French directors. France is in the middle of resisting in a good way, but also very conservative in a way, very bourgeois industry. So that's the tension we're in.
And can you tell us, maybe you can't yet, but are you writing anything? Are you working on another film, something in the pipeline yet?
I'm daydreaming. I'm always very secretive about what I write or what I think. In that process of dreaming about a film. But that doesn't mean that it could happen in 6 months or in 3 years. I don't know. But usually when I start writing, I'm fast. That's why I keep silent until I'm settled. Yeah.
Is there another female filmmaker that you've kind of got your eye on, whether in France or beyond, that you think she's also coming up fast?
Yeah, I can't just say one. But I think the film that has impressed me the most this year was made by Andrea Arnold. It's called Cow. And I think it's the most important film that has been made this year. I mean, the past few years. I think it's a very, very important film.
And just lastly, what's your favorite thing about Venice, and what does it mean to you to be part of this festival?
There's a dynamic here between past and the future. I'm looking at this island over there where there's the virtual reality section, for instance, that is quite accomplished. I think it's the festival that made it happen the most, maybe with Sundance also. But when you arrive in Venice, and especially after the pandemic and the lack of traveling, you feel like you arrive in a place where there's eternity. And I think eternity is a feeling we're not in touch with anymore, mostly because of our future. Yeah, I like that tension between having strong contemporary vision and that feeling of eternity. That city's been through a lot of plagues. yeah, it's a unique place, and it's so poetic. It's I think it's always emotional to walk in these streets.
Oh, well, that's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us.
Thank
and
you.
really enjoy the rest of your time here and working on the jury. Thanks so much.
Thank you.